Alright, we have had a number of questions about this winter time and why most of the predictions for this winter have been wrong. Well, before I get into a brief forecast, I thought I would go right into the details as to why things have really not turned out this winter the way most of us have thought they were. Let's get right into the pattern here. This is called a split flow pattern. This is where you got the northern jet and you got the southern jet. Well, you can see they're split flow. You got one to the north, one to the south, and they come in through the Pacific as a split flow. And you don't really have much in the way of convergence going on. You've got a lot of divergence with the jet streams and the flow patterns. You got a lot of systems that can't actually use the moisture from one jet stream to another and one flow pattern to another. So you really don't have much of a pattern very conducive for this type of systems to merge and head up the East Coast, or systems here in the upper Midwest to converge. Not even any good Colorado lows forming here to produce major blizzards across. It's been very quiet. So that's the main problem here, is the split flow. The second problem here, and you really want to see those jet streams come closer together. The second problem here lies with the PNA here in the North Pacific. This is where we've got, it's not as amplified as we'd like it. It's more further south. We'd like to see it further north up here, but it's actually a bit further south. Now, the west still has a ridge, and so does Western Canada, but it's not as big as the ridge that we'd like to see to get a more of a trough carved out here in the east. And the third thing, and this is what we've really noticed this winter, is the lack of a negative NAO. You want to see some height contours bending over eastern Canada and the northeastern United States, more towards from southeast to northwest. And you want these systems to be able to be blocked, if you want a good snowstorm, to move up through the northeast and not be able to head directly northeast, but to slowly push their way up the east coast and strengthen and be blocked by an area of high pressure, one usually over the North Atlantic and the other over eastern Canada. And that's what you really like to see. You'd like to see a double barrel high pressure with the blocking ridge just north of where the east coast snowstorm's going to head. So those factors have really led. The fourth thing that we really can say is we've had plenty of cold air, so that's not an excuse for no snowstorm. So as I've always said, you can have all the cold air in the world, but if you don't have these other factors, you're not going to get a good snowstorm for most of the country. So let's get right into the forecast here, and that is a brief explanation as to why I think this winter's really been, the forecasts have really not been well. We have a system here in southwest Virginia, eastern West Virginia, and heading on into western North Carolina. We've got winter storm warnings in effect. This is where we're getting some, it's interesting, we had a cold front move through and we're getting some orographic lift here. We've got some moisture, pockets of moisture here, and it's squeezing out in the form of these bands from west to east and west-northwest to east-southeast. So we're going to continue to watch that. Here in the upper plains, we got a cold pool of air into the northeast. Temperatures are very cold, but it's winter time. It can be expected. So, and out west, things are as quiet as can be. That'll change a little bit in the Pacific Northwest during the next 24 to 36 hours. I'm going to get right into precipitation amounts here during the next 4 days here. This is where we're going to see, we're going to see a little bit here in the northwest with another system in the next 48 hours waiting, and of course here in the east with some of that snow. And we'll talk about a major system that could affect the East Coast here Friday. And that is, here's the temperatures for this week. We'll take a couple days here, and we'll see some bouts of cooler air, pretty temperate out west. But that's what we're looking at through Friday here. Now, let's take a look at where this Friday system could head. The Euro is the only model that is hinting at this development, and bringing the system right up along the coast and pushing it up towards the northeast, affecting much of the big cities of the northeast, and then heading on up into New England and really strengthening as it heads up the coast. The rest of the models are taking it well out to sea. The Euro's had a very good track record, so I'd like to put my belief in that. But we've seen a lot of strange happenings this winter with the models. So before I make an official snow forecast, being that it's nearly 5 days out, I want some more model data. I want more models to come on board with this. And I will hesitate right now on bringing any snowfall. But there's snowfall likelihood, possibility exists here along the East Coast, particularly for the big cities and southeastern and eastern New England. So we're going to continue to watch that. That would be a possible Friday storm. That is definitely not definite, and the details are very sketchy at this point. As for the rest of the weather, we don't have too much else to talk about at the moment. Things have been very quiet. I'm meteorologist Mark Molnar. Like us on Facebook at MeteoMark. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Oh, and one thing before I leave is lake effect snow bands are continuing here off the east end of Lake Erie in Ontario. And here are the snowfall accumulations. On the east end of Lake Ontario here, we'll see an additional 4 to 8 inches, likely, possibly up to a foot locally, near just south of Dunkirk. And then east end of Lake Ontario here, that's where we're getting some streamers coming off the lakes. We'll see an additional, most likely, 4 to 8 inches of snow across just north of Rochester over to North Syracuse and extending it up towards Oswego, Pulaski, and Montague, New York. That's going to do it for this segment. I'm meteorologist Mark Molnar. Like us on Facebook at MeteoMark. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like the video if you liked it. And here's a 4-day forecast for my hometown viewers from Binghamton to Elmira and the northern tier counties of Pennsylvania.